We'll go to Abuja now from Kano.
Absolutely. Now, a lot of components come together in this fight against COVID-19 to make it successful, and one big one is the National Assembly. So we have joining us this morning a member of the National Assembly of the House of Representatives, Honorable Dachung Bagos. He is in our Abuja studio, and right next to him is Mr. Obinna Rakba, who is a public affairs analyst. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Good morning, Kaide.
Great to have you. Now, let me begin with Honorable Bagos. It was quite an interesting session at the House yesterday. You know, the question about the Chinese doctors and, you know, the response from the Minister of Interior as regards that. So let's just quickly take that out of the way. Are you satisfied with the response you have gotten, or you want more? And what exactly does this do in this, you know, whole fight against COVID-19 for you?
Well, I'm not satisfied with the explanation of the Minister of Interior because if you watch his explanation, he said the Chinese doctors were part of installation of some of the equipments at the Dome Center. So is it that the 15 Chinese doctors came to Nigeria and all of them turned to technicians to fix equipment at the Dome Center? No. So a lot of inquiry will need to be carried out by the House. If you see the motion that was adopted in the House yesterday was sent to about 3 relevant committees, committees on national security, foreign affairs, interior, and health, because we want to, as a House, we want to ascertain to know among the 15 people how many are doctors, what kind of doctors are they, and want to really know how professional they are to come into Nigeria to help us in the fight against COVID-19. And again, through the Foreign Affairs Committee, we still want to know the relationship, who really requested for the Chinese doctors to come into Nigeria, because if we have contradictory response. The spokesperson of the Embassy of Chinese said the doctors are coming on a request of Nigerian government. Later on, we had a different story that they're coming from as a part of the corporate social responsibility of a construction company. So we really want to know what really happened. How did we get where we are? And the National Security Committee will want to get to know how and what is the manifest of all the 15 doctors. Who are they by name? What's their profile? Because this is a matter of, again, a matter of national security. We really don't know who they are or what they are, what is the genuine intention of being in Nigeria. Because if from inception we have 15 people coming into Nigeria as medical doctors, and down the line we are having feelers that some are technicians, some are this, so who really are they? So these are issues that the House will want to know. And why the House is really interested, because if you check on the 7th of April, the Speaker mediated in making sure that everything went smoothly between the perception that Nigerians were having. So if the Speaker in his capacity came out to mediate, definitely he have the right to know, and the House have the right to know what really went on, not just to mediate, and at the end of the day, he might receive the blame, and the House might receive the blame that, look, you mediated in coming of allowing the people to come in, but this is how it turns out. So we really need to have full information of the 15 doctors that came into Nigeria.
You know, we also understand that the medical team came with equipment and what have you. So I wonder if that will also be factored in. But just briefly, I'd like to take on Mr. Arakpa's perspective regarding, you know, this. This resolution from the House. What do you think it does in this whole scheme of things? Because some will say that maybe this is not that important. Do you share that perspective?
No, it would be out of place to say that the honorable members of the House are dealing with something that is not all that important. We are in very unusual times, and I will say this quickly, that even me, I'm looking for the Chinese myself. But long and short, like my people will say, when the drumbeat changes, you change your dance steps. These are not normal times. The COVID-19 pandemic has put everyone on their toes. I will also backstep to tell you that some of the challenges that Nigerians had in China put out a certain misgiving against anything coming from China. So I believe that the members of the House have a right, we voted them in, to sit in there and represent us. That's why they are called representatives. So they have a right to ask the questions, and like the Honorable Minister for Interior said yesterday, the journalists, the media persons, the fourth estate of the realm have a right to ask questions. It's an issue of national security. But that having been said, what I see primarily is the issue of communication. I teach communication, and I've had cause to say that until the person you are speaking to has understood, you have not communicated. So I believe strongly that we need to put all of this in the public domain. What was said by the health minister, I believe maybe it's possible that the pressure is coming down on those gentlemen that sit at the presidential task force.
You know, Mr. Rockba, you know what?
A lot of work coming over the
Mr. Rockba, a moment, please.
You know,
we'll explore what you just brought up further in a moment. If you can hear me, I'd like you to hold your thoughts for a moment, please. We'll explore that, definitely. You've raised a major issue, but we need to go to break. And when we return, we'll explore what you have brought up and talk about, the stimulus package, this extension of the easing of the lockdown, and some other major issues that have come up during the course of our battle against COVID-19 in a moment. Join us again. So those were highlights of what played out at the National Assembly, the House of Representatives yesterday. We still have with us Honorable Dachung Bagos, which you saw speaking there earlier on. He's with us this morning, joins us from our Abuja studio, as well as Mr. Obinna Uragba. Thank you for staying with us. So, Mr. Uragba, I'd like you to land on the talk about miscommunication, because you seem to be making a point about that earlier on. Please land on that.
Okay, I began to say that in communication strategy, until the person you are speaking to has understood, you have not communicated. I have consistently said it, even on this platform, that we need to look critically at the communication strategy and methodology in our country today, both in the public and the private sector. But specifically about government, I suspect that we need to have more cohesion on how communication comes from the top down even to the ward level. If you listen to the chairman of the PTF speaking yesterday at the briefing, he talked about drilling down the communication about COVID-19 down to the ward level. He talked about stakeholders engagement, mapping, and all of those things that you need to do. Now, management of stakeholders is very key. Now, you can say one thing, believing that you've said it, but the perception of the people who are receiving it matters. So I began to talk about the health minister's expression that he shouldn't be asked about these Chinese people once more. What I would say is that I will cut him some slack. It's been a lot of pressure, not just for those of them who are the PTF giving us daily briefings, even those of us who sit at home, who obey the easing of the lockdowns and resolve to, even on our own, take responsibility not to rush into the streets, knowing that we're dealing with a pandemic and we do not want a repeat of what happened in 1918 with the Spanish flu. What I suspect by saying do not ask me questions about the Chinese is that at the point, like the Honorable said, the government said that this was an offer that was given to Nigeria by the Chinese. At the point, the representative of the Chinese embassy spoke and said that Nigeria had supported them at some time and it was time to reciprocate. At the point, the government said that these persons are coming in to help support the fight against COVID-19 by installing equipment and doing trainings and all of that. At the point, we were told that the CCECC, the construction company that has been here for over 25 years helping with the infrastructure, the railway infrastructure and all of that, was the one that was hosting them. And at the point they said they were going to go into quarantine for 14 days, we would have thought that the Interior Minister, being the person responsible for ensuring that internal security is well taken care of, receiving people, should also go ahead to keep monitoring where these people are so that we constantly be briefed as a nation and as a people. Now, once that lacuna existed, speculation set in. So I would be quick to say that, like George Bush said, if you want to make a man trustworthy, simply trust him. I trust the people who are managing our affairs. However, the onus still lies on them to do everything possible to ensure that the people trust them by virtue of the things that they do and the things that they say. That having been said, we're in the midst of a war. and we may not be involved in civilian activities. We simply need to face what is facing us. I believe the National Assembly has a right to invite them, and when they invite them, and I suspect the chairman of PTF and his team went to the National Assembly yesterday, and at the briefing, I was sitting at home watching it, I saw the vice chairman of the Health Committee, who is also in the Senate, who is also the chairman of the Rules and Business. He joined them at the briefing, and he even took a question himself on the bill for the mental health. So that having been said, this is our nation. I carry the green passport, and I am not planning to relocate to anywhere. I believe that we all hands have to be on deck to make sure we get this out of the way. As a business person, as an entrepreneur, I'm not happy sitting at home. But I'm taking responsibility not to go get killed out there by coronavirus. I will support the work of the PTF, but they also need to be up to speed. They need to wear their jersey, play their wing, and make sure we score the goal on getting this out of our system and get things sorted out. Thank you very much.
I can see that you can't wait for the EPL to get back on the screen. But let me take this to Honorable Bagos. So now the lockdown has been extended by another 2 weeks from the first 2 weeks. If you were to take an assessment of the first 2 weeks, what do you think we missed that's made it necessary for us to repeat this class, as we say here? What do you think we missed, and what must we correct in order not to have another extension or go back to class 1?
Yeah, well, I always say that Nigeria is a mono economy, and which we all know that. And if you're going to keep people at home for 2 weeks, imagine that out of 200 million people, and with the rate of poverty that we have, out of 200 million, which means over 170 million are hungry. So first of all, we must be able to ascertain how are we going to take care of the 170 million people, which is very important and paramount. A lot of people go out in the morning to get what they will eat in the evening. So if you're going to keep them at home for 2 weeks, that should be your major priority, because you cannot quantify the damage you will get from people being infected with the virus in terms of death and treatment by what you will give them at home to eat. So major concern should have been, what kind of palliative will you give people that will take them for 2 weeks? We have seen palliatives in other forms that will just take somebody maybe for 24 hours, and that has been a very serious issue. And again, even the issue of human rights violation has been there in the first 2 weeks of the lockdown. And if you look at the first 2 weeks of the lockdown that we had, 18 people were killed, while Corona killed only 11 people. So a lot of issues the PTF needs to review, and the executive need to review. And if you still see in the wisdom of the National Assembly, in the first 2 weeks, the National Assembly had to call the Minister of the Humanitarian Services and so on and so forth to really ask, what are you doing to our people? Because as representative of the people, we need to be carried along, and we know how people bank on our doors every day as if we are the executives, not lawmakers. And we know if you ask every National Assembly member what he have doled out to his people at this very particular period, if you put it together, I can assure you it's even more than what the executive have put out to the people. So we feel the pressure of the people. We know what the people are feeling on a daily basis. We expect and we believe that the executive should do more in the process of this lockdown, because if people are not fed, people usually tell us, look, give us something to eat, because the corona of hunger will even kill us more than the virus. So to manage this, they should be able to look at what can we do to really keep people at home, because 200 million people is not a joke to manage. And just like from what Obina have said, communication in trying, what are you doing, it's very key and it's very important. So there should be a two-way traffic in how PTF carry out its assignment. And again, to even the activities of PTF, and we have discussed this in many fora, yes, I'm a politician. They have more of the politicians there, but they need to bring in more technocrats into the system so that they will be able to give them serious advice and as consultants to be able to carry out this. But if they carry out the assignment with the political mind, then definitely we'll always and only have it as politicians. But more technocrats need to come into this, into the management of COVID-19 so that it won't just be seen that politicians are the ones managing the issue. So I think a lot needs to be done.
Mr. Rappa, do you agree that the absence of, well, maybe inadequacy of some of the inadequacies we have seen may be because we do not have enough technocrats in the working with the PTF? Do you agree?
To some extent, yes. I would not be doing justice to this discussion to say I disagree. However, I believe strongly that the gentlemen and ladies that are in that committee are patriots, and they come from a background. A bit of what I think I'm seeing, the health minister himself, obviously, honorable, I believe, should be a doctor, should be a medical doctor, you know, so he comes from that health constituency. I also believe that the NCDC man who is there comes from that sector also. So these are persons who play in those sectors. But I agree with him that we should involve more people. There's also an issue that Honorable may need to bring up because he is representing us. The issue of women. Women who have a high demography of women. The argument has been made whether the president needs to consider getting maybe the Women Affairs Minister or get some women who have the National Council of Women's Societies, who have women who are out there, who are in the MSME sector, who are playing in different sectors. Do we need to bring in the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria in? Do we need to bring in other technocrats? Yes, I think I agree with Honorable to that extent. However, I will still make the point that yes, there are politicians there in higher number than technocrats, so to speak, but the politicians are also technocrats themselves who are now in politics, which is what we have always advocated, that we the practitioners on the outside need to get in there, wear the shoes and know how it pinches, and get in there and do all of the things we've been criticizing from the outside. I think the chairman of the PTF, if I'm right, Honorable, is a lawyer, you know, and has been in politics, has been an entrepreneur, I believe, also. So I think he wears the shoes. I remember when he made a comment at the National Assembly about not knowing the extent the health sector had gone. I had commented on some other platform that if I were him, I would not have said that because he didn't sound as a politician. He spoke as a patriot. He spoke truth to power. He said what he was saying. Normal politicians will not speak the way he spoke. So that commendation goes to the PTF chairman. But that having been said, I agree with Honorable. Let's look at it. It's our nation. Let's do monitoring. Let's evaluate what we have done in the past 5 weeks going into easing of lockdown. Have we done it exactly the way we should have done? Are we at 70%? Do we need to go to 90? Are we at 50? Just appraise ourselves. And nothing is wrong. Nothing is wrong in itself. It depends on our approach, sir.
Well, yeah, I think, let me add to what Obinna is saying. You see, I would love to see in the next briefing to see someone like the NAFDAC DG telling us what are they doing in terms of local content of getting either the vaccine or the herbal medicine, or what have they certified. Has NAFDAC certified most of the equipments that are coming, especially in terms of the drugs or in terms of even the test kits, because you have a lot of issues. NAFDAC needs to come to PTF to tell us what they are doing in time to certify this. For instance, the president of Nigerian Medical Association needs to come and to be part of PTF. Come and tell us how are the health workers in the front line faring. So a lot of people.
On that one, just one moment, Honorable. Just one moment, Honorable. On that one, where when you talk about inviting the DG of NAFDAC, one of the things that the DG of NAFDAC will tell you is what the DG of NIMR will tell you, is what the DG of NIPID will tell you, is that in the quest for local solutions, whether vaccine or whatever, to treat this and related diseases, funding is a major problem. Is there a role the National Assembly can play in that? Absolutely.
Absolutely. There are a lot of ways National Assembly can come into issues like that, like this, in terms of whatsoever request that might come from the presidency. And if you check just last week, the president brought in a request for some internal borrowing of over 850 billion. So a trillion or so. So a lot of things can be done by the National and from the National Assembly in terms of funding in any area. But it's left for the executive to bring in a proposal to the National Assembly, which it is. And not only that, so far, funding from donations from different individuals have been sent into, because of the COVID-19, about over 70-something billion naira so far. So what will those funds be used for? So a lot of things can be done. When it comes to funding, let's know what the executive needs to do and what they need, so that we'll be able to solve this very problem. So the issue of funding shouldn't arise, but have they requested, or have they brought in proposals to the National Assembly? What have they done with funds that are available as donations from individuals? So these are issues that the PTF really needs to look into, explore other avenues. The National Assembly is always there for Nigerians, because we can't have a proposal that will solve the problem of Nigeria and will not act upon it. And again, definitely oversight from the National Assembly will definitely come into play. Jokingly, you see people making some posts that after COVID-19, post-COVID-19, you will see National Assembly investigating COVID-19 funds spent, or so on and so forth. But that's the reality of the matter, that whatsoever funds that the National Assembly is going to approve towards COVID-19, definitely there will and there must be oversight.
I was quickly going to ask you about the stimulus bill. We've talked about that largely, but we've not heard anything about it. So in about a few seconds, what is your update on that?
Yeah, well, the stimulus bill, as it is, you have to get concurrence from the Senate. The Speaker is working on that to see how we can get the Senate passed through that. And once the Senate passed through it, it will now get to the President for assignment. So once that is done, the stimulus bill will come into action, because the stimulus bill, it's a legislation that would really bring succors to the economy, in terms of trying to see how people will get some of those things, issue of the tariff that we're talking of, issue of importing medical equipment, and so on and so forth. And these are issues that the National Assembly has been working on even before the COVID-19 issue became serious as it is now.
All right. So on a final note, Mr. Rokba, as we wind down, we are in the first week of the extension. We're looking at another week. We're not exactly sure what will happen after this. And bear in mind that, I mean, the figures we're seeing now, some will say we've not even started seeing the figures from the previous lockdown, because there's a 2 days to 2 week period of incubation for COVID-19 and the whole testing. So what is that singular thing that you think we need to put in place so we can exit this phase and move on to the next phase?
It's very simple. Ownership consciousness. Every Nigerian needs to take ownership of this process. And like the chairman of the PTF said, and I heard him clearly yesterday, every Nigerian needs to take ownership. I like the fact that just yesterday, the public relations practitioners of Nigeria offered their services. I know that a few other civil society organizations, I know that Stay Safe Nigeria is doing a lot of things on the online. I know that the Society of Igbo Professionals are doing their things in the Southeast. I know that traditional rulers are doing their stuff. Even as I sit here, I have my face mask made by some young entrepreneurs. I know that a lot of people in different sectors are doing their stuff. The long and short of it is, let's call a spade a spade. My people will tell you, if a father dies, let the child that has the resources bury the father, because it's not the firstborn that killed the father. Long and short is that oil is nosediving, and like Honorable said, we have been a monocultural economy for a long time. The Chinese will tell you the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time to plant it is now. Long and short is that we've made our mistakes. What happened to us for 59 years, that we're coming to the 60th year, to now diversify our economy. But that having been said, long and short, the Food Security Committee that was set
Mr.
up...
Rockwell, you know, that's the fourth long and short. I mean, but the point is taken. Let's plant that tree right now. But we'd like to thank you so much, Mr. Obinna Urakwa. He's a public affairs analyst, as well as Honorable Dachung Bagos, a member of the House of Representatives. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for sharing your thoughts with us this morning.
Thank you. Thank you, Iron Card. Yeah.
Thank you.